This is a multi-part tutorial on how we can acquire census data and map it in ArcGIS. In this first part, we're going to acquire American Community Survey data and prepare it for use in ArcGIS. So American Community Survey data can be acquired from American Fact Finder on this web page. We're going to click on Download Center. It's going to prompt us for the dataset or package data we want, and we want to search for the dataset or table. We don't want the prepackaged data. So we're going to click Next. Then we're going to specify that we want American Community Survey data. Specifically, we want 2013 ACS 5-year estimates, so we'll add that to our selection. Next, we'll pick the geography, and we're interested here in this exercise in looking at race by municipality or towns and cities in Massachusetts. In New England, municipalities are known as county subdivisions, so we're going to choose county subdivision. Specify the state of Massachusetts. And then instead of choosing a specific county, we're going to choose all county subdivisions within Massachusetts. Add that to our selection. Hit Next. And then, as I said, we're interested in finding data on race. So we're going to define race, specifically looking for minorities, as people who are Hispanic or non-white. So Hispanic is kind of the defining characteristic. So we type in Hispanic in the search bar, and we're looking for this table right here, B03002, Hispanic or Latino origin by race. Hit Go. It isolates the table that we want. Put a check mark next to it, and then download. It will prompt us, reminding us what we're downloading. We'll say OK. And then when it's ready, we can click the download button, and we'll be prompted to save a zip file. So all the files you download from ACS are always going to have the same name. So if you're downloading multiple files, you might want to create a naming scheme so you don't get mixed up. So hit OK. And I'm going to save mine in a folder I've already created on the desktop called ACS Race. So I'm saving that file in there. And first thing I want to do is unzip that file. So I'm going to navigate to that folder on my desktop. And there's the file I just downloaded. So I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to unzip it using 7-zip. You may have WinZip. Either way, you need to make sure that you extract the files and don't leave them into, oops, that's not the option I wanted. Extract here. There we go. Alright, once you extract them, you're going to have a variety of files that come out of that one zipped file. And the data that we want is going to be in this file right here, the ones that ends with within. So it's a CSV file, which is a comma separated values file. It's a common format for providing tabular data in a way that most programs can open. So this one already can be opened by Excel. So we're going to open that up, and we're going to take a look at it. And you'll see that it has two top rows that are columns. The topmost row is the column headers, but they're kind of cryptic. And then you'll see the second row gives more descriptive column descriptions. And so this is good for the moment, although we're going to have to eliminate that because Arc will not like those particular labels. So the first thing we want to do, though, is we want to just isolate the data that we want. And there's really only two columns that interest us. We need to know the total number of people in each municipality, and we need to also know the total number of people who are white and not Hispanic or Latino. And the reason we want that is because we're going to basically define minority as the opposite of that, basically people who are Hispanic or who are not white. So we just want those two columns, the total population in this column with the numbers of people who are not Hispanic and who are white. Oops, this is the one we want, the estimate. Make sure you don't make that mistake. So the margin of error is given for each value, and the margin of error is simply given because these are samples rather than total counts. So for certain kinds of statistics where you're looking for measures of confidence or statistical significance in difference, you need this. But for our purposes, we're just interested in the estimates, the total numbers. So we're looking for that column and the total. So we're going to eliminate the other columns that we don't need. Okay, so make sure we got the right columns. We want total, people who are white and non-Hispanic, and then the rest of these columns can go. So I'm just going to highlight all of them all the way to the end of this table, and then I'm going to right click and delete them, and I'm doing that so that we don't get mixed up. I'm also going to have to get rid of this second row, as I said earlier, because Arc won't like these long names. So I'm going to right click, delete that row, but I'm going to rename these columns so I don't get mixed up, especially because we might end up bringing together a lot of different tables. So I'm going to call this total pop, and this one I'm just going to call white, and we'll have to remember that white means the total numbers of whites. So I'm going to shrink that a little bit so it looks a little like it fits better. And then I'm also going to change these column names here to replace the periods with underscores, just because sometimes Arc has a problem with that. And so the data looks pretty good. I see that we don't have any illegal column headings, and we just have the data that we want, so this should work in Arc. So now I'm going to save this file as a CSV file, okay? And you could have saved it as an earlier version of Excel, but Excel's acts a little buggy in Arc. It's always hard to tell whose fault it is, but in a case, it's probably safer to stay with a text file. So a CSV is fine. Now I don't want to save over the original data just in case I make a mistake, so I want to make a copy of it. So I'm going to call this 2 on the end there just to distinguish between the original and this new copy that I'm going to create. And I'm going to save it, and it's going to prompt you this is a different format. That's fine. We'll say yes. And then we want to close this Excel table entirely because Arc will not like it if a file is open in another application at the same time that it's trying to access it. Okay, so there's our new file right there, and it looks good so far. We'll inspect it in a second. The next bit of data we're going to need, though, is the geography files, the GIS data, to join that to. So we're going to be going to the Mass GIS data, and I'm already directly on the page we're looking for. We're looking for data layers from the 2010 U.S. Census and Mass GIS, and that page has a link so we can download the municipalities or cities and towns boundaries for the state of Massachusetts. So if you scroll down a bit, you're going to find an area that lists municipalities, and that's the file that we're interested in. Or specifically, we're interested in this shapefiles link here. So I'm going to click on that. And here we'll also be prompted to download a zipped file, and I'm going to save that file in the same folder that I downloaded the ACS data. So we'll save it in there, and then once again we're going to go to that folder and we're going to unzip that data that we just downloaded. So again, I'm using 7-zip to do this, and I'm extracting it here. Doesn't matter what application you use as long as you extract it. Alright, so we see a whole bunch of files here that we've just unzipped. We're only going to need a bit of this, though, and Arc will recognize what these files are when we work on this. So now we have our data, we have the geography GIS files, and we have the ACS tabular data with our information on race. So we're ready to move on, and the next step we're going to look at is how to begin mapping that in Arc.